Good day, students. Welcome to Mathgotserved.com. On this clip, we're going to be going over section 1.4a of our virtual Algebra 1 text. We're going to be focusing on how to add and subtract integers. Alright, before we get started with the examples, we're going to do a real quick review on the rules for multiplying signs and for adding and subtracting numbers. Okay, so let's do our rules review. Now, the first rule that we are going to be reviewing is the rule on how to multiply signs. Okay, so multiplying signs. Now, there's a neat little tool, mnemonic device, to help you remember how to multiply signs. It's called a peace sign. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at the peace sign. So there goes my circle, and then we're gonna make our peace sign. Okay, so there goes your peace sign. How does this help us remember how to multiply and divide, multiply signs? Basically, the same rules apply to division, but we'll focus on multiplication this time. Okay, so we have minus, minus, and plus. Okay, so what the peace sign helps us to see is when you're multiplying minus and minus, so minus times minus gives you what? Plus. Okay? And then minus times plus gives you minus, and minus times plus gives you minus. Bottom line, what the peace sign helps you to see is when you're multiplying two signs that are the same, for example, minus and minus, your answer is going to be plus. Or if you're multiplying plus and plus, your answer will be plus. But when you're multiplying signs that are different, plus times minus or minus times plus, your answer will always be minus. Okay? So let's go ahead and write that down on the side. When you multiply the same signs, you will always get positive sign as your answer. Okay, so let's look at the two cases. So for example, if you have minus times minus, the signs are the same, right? What's your answer going to be? Minus times minus is going to be plus, because when you're multiplying the same signs, you get plus. Or if you're multiplying plus times plus, your answer is going to be plus because the signs are the same. Okay? Now, when you multiply different signs, guess what? When you multiply different signs, your sign will be negative. Okay? So let's take a look at two cases. So you can either have minus times plus. So if you have minus times plus, what do you think the answer is going to be? Minus times plus is going to be minus because the signs are different. What if you have plus times minus? Plus times minus, since the signs are different, plus times minus is going to be equal to minus also. Alright, so don't forget the rule. Whenever you're multiplying the same signs, you have plus, and when you're multiplying different signs, you have minus. Okay? So that's the first set of rules we're going to be reviewing. The second one has to do with how to add and subtract numbers. Okay, we're talking about real numbers in this case. Alright, so the rules for adding and subtracting numbers. Adding and subtracting numbers. Alright, so what are the two rules that we're going to look at for adding and subtracting numbers? Well, basically it has to do with the sign of the numbers that you're adding or subtracting. Okay? In the context of this problem, we're going to call adding and subtracting numbers combining numbers. Alright, so the addition or subtracting will be viewed as a combination operation. So the first case is if you have two numbers that you're combining and both numbers have the same sign. Okay? So in adding and subtracting numbers, if the signs are the same, signs are the same, what do? The same sign, you add and keep the sign. Alright? If the signs are the same, add and keep the sign. Add and keep the sign. Case number 2 is when the numbers are different. The signs are different. If the signs are different, guess what? If the signs are different, what you do is you subtract first, subtract the numbers, and guess what? You keep the sign of the greater number. Alright, so that's basically the rules for adding and subtracting numbers. Alright, let's take a look at some examples. The instructions are as follows. We are to evaluate the given expressions. Okay, number 1. What if we have negative 8 minus 6? So let's go ahead and evaluate this expression. Now, first thing we want to note is that we're going to basically combine the two numbers, and that will yield the answer. Okay? So before I do that, let me outline the steps that we're going to be using for these problems. The first step, is you're going to multiply and divide signs. Multiply. Well, in this context, we're just going to multiply signs. And then, lastly, we'll combine. Alright? So step 1 will be optional. Some problems will have situations where you have to multiply signs, and other cases you don't. Okay? So in this particular problem, we do not have any situation where there are two signs next to each other, or two signs being multiplied by each other. So what does that mean? That means that we're going to skip step 1 and jump right to step 2, which is a combination step. So we're simply just going to combine. Alright, so what's the rule for combining? In this particular case, we have two numbers that have the same sign. So how do we resolve this? In this particular case, we're going to do what? So signs are the same. So we're going to add the numbers and keep the sign. Alright, so add and keep the sign. Alright, so what does that look like? We have negative 8 minus 6. So when I mean add, we're adding the numbers. Okay, so forget about the sign for a second. 8 plus 6. What is 8 plus 6? 8 plus 6 is 14. So when we combine these two numbers, we add the numbers 8 plus 6, which is 14, and the negativity is preserved, so you keep the sign. Negative 8 minus 6 is negative 14. That's the answer to question number 1. Alright, let's try another example. Question 2. What if we have negative 7 plus 6? Okay? Alright, so in this particular case, do we have any signs adjacent to each other? Signs next to each other that have to be multiplied? The answer is no. So we're just going to jump right to step 2, which is a combination step. We're going to combine the numbers because each number has a sign. 7 has one sign and 6 has one sign in front of it. Okay, so what's the rule here? If you notice, These two numbers have different signs, minus and plus. So signs are different. What's the rule for combining numbers when the signs are different? When the signs are different, you subtract. Okay? You subtract and keep the sign of the bigger or greater. Keep sign of larger number. Alrighty? So let's go ahead and carry out the calculation. We're to calculate negative 7 plus 6. So we'll just subtract the numbers on the side. Forget about the signs first. 7 minus 6 is 1. So what's the sign of our answer going to be? Negative or positive? 7 and 6, which is bigger? 7 is bigger, so we're going to take the sign of 7. Alright? So your answer is going to be negative 1. That's the result of negative 7 plus 6. Alright, let's take a look at question number 3. This one is slightly longer. What if we have minus 5 plus negative 6? Alright, let's take a look at this. So for this one, you notice that we have two signs next to each other here, minus and plus. So we have to execute step 1 first, which is to multiply signs. So what's the rule for multiplying signs? Remember, when the signs are different, you have a minus as a product of the signs. And when they're the same, you have plus. So plus and minus are different. So what is plus times minus? Since they're different, plus times minus is minus. Okay? So let's go ahead and apply that here. We have negative 5 plus negative 6. So what we're doing now is multiplying these two signs, minus times plus, or plus times minus. So we're going to have negative 5 plus times minus is minus 6. Okay, we're now clear to advance to step 2 since there are no other pair of signs next to each other that need to be multiplied. So we're now going to combine. What's the rule for combination? To combine, in this particular case, the signs are the same. Okay? So when signs are the same, what do you do? Well, signs are the same, you add and keep the sign. Okay? Add and keep the sign. Okay, so let's see. Minus 5, minus 6. Let's add the numbers here. 5 plus 6 is what? 5 plus 6 is 11. So minus 5 minus 6 is going to be negative 11 because the sign of these two numbers are negative. So final answer for problem 3 is negative 11. Okay, let's take a look at question 4. What if we have 3 minus negative 5? Alright. Well, we have two signs next to each other here. So step 1, we have to multiply the signs first. In this particular case, we're looking at minus times minus. You're multiplying two signs that are the same. So guess what the answer is going to be? Plus. Alrighty, let's apply that to the problem. 3 minus negative 5. You multiply these two signs here, and you get positive. So it's going to become 3 plus 5. That takes us to step 2, where we're going to combine. These two numbers have the same sign. Alright, so what happens? What do you do when you have the same sign? When combining numbers, if you have the same sign, you add and keep the sign. Okay. Alright, let's do it. So 3 plus 5 is going to be, 3 plus 5 is 8. Since they're both positive, your final answer will be positive 8. Alright, let's take a look at one more example, slightly longer than problem 4 and 3. What if we are to evaluate the expression negative 4 minus 7 plus negative 8? Alright, do we have signs to be multiplied here? Absolutely. You have a plus and a minus next to each other, so those two have to be taken care of. So in step 1, we're going to multiply signs. What signs are we multiplying here? We're multiplying positive times negative. Since the signs are different, your product will be minus. Okay? Alright, so negative 4 minus 7 plus negative 8. We're going to just multiply these two signs, okay? Bring down the other numbers. You have negative 4 minus 7, and then plus times minus is minus 8. Alright? So what we're going to do is we're going to just combine the numbers now from left to right. Remember your order of operations. Whenever you have addition and subtraction, you just do them at the same time from left to right. Okay? So here we're combining from left to right. In this particular case, we have the same sign across. So we're going to just use that one rule. If you have the same sign, you add and keep the sign. Okay? Add and keep the sign. So the only one sign we have here is just negative. So our final answer will definitely be negative. Okay, so negative 4 minus 7 minus 8. Starting from the leftmost pair, negative 4 minus 7, you add and keep the sign, negative 11, because of course you know 4 plus 7 is 11. So you add the numbers and keep the sign, minus 8. Now, we just resolve these last two. Signs are the same, so you add 11 plus 8 is 19, and you keep the sign, which is negative. So minus 11 minus 8 is equal to negative 19. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the answer to question number 5. Alright, so how well did you understand the problems we just went over, the process? Well, to demonstrate mastery, I would like you to try out the following problems. Okay, so try these problems out. Instructions are to evaluate each expression. Okay, so what you do is just, you know the drill, you copy down the problems, try them out. Before you start solving them, you pause the videos, and then when you're done solving all the problems, you can then resume the playback process, and you will see the answers. Okay, so number 1, number 2, 8 plus negative 7, number 3, negative 4 plus negative 3, number 4, negative 5 plus 8, and number 5, 4 plus negative 1 minus negative 3. Alright, so go ahead and pause the video. I'd like you to evaluate each expression, and when you're done, just click on play to see what the answers are. Okay, so hopefully you've had a chance to try these problems. Here are your answers. Number 1, the answer is negative 2. Number 2, the answer is positive 1. Number 3, the answer is negative 7. Number 4, the answer is 3. Number 5, the answer is 6. Thanks so much for taking the time to watch this presentation. I really appreciate it. If you found the contents of this tutorial helpful in your studies on how to add and subtract integers, do give us a thumbs up. Your positive feedback is very valuable to us. If you have any questions or comments about the contents of this presentation, just place it in the comment section below and we'll be more than glad to respond. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for updates to the remainder of this virtual text series. More clips, resources, and support tools can be found at mathgotserved.com. Go ahead and check it out. Thanks again for watching and have a wonderful day.